Only one thing to say. Game time is about 2 hours away. Paige Bueckers is back. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate all of the support, audio, video, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love it. We're thankful. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn men's and women's basketball programs, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. To show your gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games. If you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, and leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Okay, we're going to bring on Bella Tamano. She is, get her in the program here, and then I'll embarrass her with how amazing she is. Add her to the stage. We bring in Bella Tamano, a beat reporter for Hoops Capital of the World and a regular contributor to Locked On UConn as a co-host with me. Bella, we got word about an hour and a half ago. Paige Bueckers is back tonight at St. John's. What impact do you see her having, and how long do you think she plays?
Tonight, I feel like playing St. John's. It's not like she's going to have to go, 30 plus minutes. I could see Gino wanting to hold her maybe 22, 23 minutes, just kind of get her back in the rotation. Obviously, she'll start. There's no really question about that. Ashlyn Shade will probably sit on the bench, take a seat tonight. But other than that, I honestly don't think there's much of a worry. I don't think there's a huge need for her. And at the end of the day, I think it's still a developmental game for, some other players, Morgan Shelley, Alice Bell, and continue to kind of get Sarah Strong into an even bigger leadership role on the team. And AZ Fudd keep killing it, 23 points against Xavier and 21 against Georgetown. So they just got to keep up what they're doing, and having Paige back, they don't need her, but it's great to have her on the court.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I think there's not like a historical significance to it, but when AZ sprained her knee, which is a similar injury that Paige just had, she played like 12, 13 minutes at a time, and then she started to ramp up towards that 2022 mark. I'd be shocked if Paige plays more than 20 minutes. I think she's going to be between 10 and 15. Because St. John's, again, we'll get into the preview here in the second segment, but they don't score a ton of points. They play pretty tough defense. Again, but they're also going to be playing a team that has so many weapons. And you're right. I think he's going to lean on Sarah. I think he's going to lean on AZ. I think you're going to see Ashlyn Shade. She may not start, but she's definitely going to make her presence known in this game and really kind of take the load off Paige. But just her being back, either in the starting lineup, I didn't get word. I mean, usually Paige is starting, but I just wonder if they play her in a limited role off the bench. Doubt that's the case, but either way, I think just having her back psychologically. I mean, if you were on this team, how would it make you feel knowing that she's back and she's healthy? She may not play 30 minutes tonight, but how would that make you feel as a teammate?
I mean, it's great. Like we talked about on last week's episode. It's great to have her on the court because she sees the game better than anybody else. The way she passes the ball, you can just tell she is 10 steps ahead of everybody. She knows where she wants to go with the ball before she even has it. So I think, that's great to have. But also as a teammate, you probably want to think, okay, you never want to overlook an opponent, but you have to know tonight we want to make it as easy on her as possible. So, you want to make sure that you don't have to make her overextend herself. And as a teammate, I think you just want to be there for her and play your A game. So again, Gino doesn't have to maybe play her for a couple extra minutes than he wants to. And the other thing that you want to notice too, this is her third knee injury on the same left knee in 5 years. I mean, that's a lot of damage on your knee.
Yeah.
So if you are Gino or you are her teammates, sure, it's great to have her back in the lineup, but you have to know, we really have to tread lightly with her because, again, things can change we don't want her to get a fourth knee injury on that knee, or another injury if she does baby that left knee and then maybe kind of like puts a little more strain on other parts of her body. That's another thing that you also don't want, getting closer to that March timeline.
And this is something I sent you during the day today. It's not on the rundown, but I just want you to react to this. And I'm going to use a stat. We don't have a graph or anything with this, but the UConn women's basketball hit 3.25 million in ticket sales. And according to Sportico, it is also reported that the women's team, their ticket sales surpassed that of 75 NCAA Division I men's programs in this past year. What are your thoughts on that and how incredible the fan base is that supports them, but also these incredible women who we support here in Connecticut?
I mean, that's just insane. You know what I'm saying? Like this isn't a stat that 20 years ago you would think it was like a fake headline. And the 75 programs that you're talking about, I saw that as well. We're talking Alabama, LSU, Oregon. Like we're not talking some, like cupcake programs. These are serious, like SEC, big conference schools. Again, I think it's so special. And it's also, I mean, if you look at a graph, it's not like a, jet, like getting higher and higher. I mean, it's rapid from just getting so much more media coverage, so much more viewership when it comes to obviously WNBA, but specifically in college. I mean, it's huge. These big names like Paige Bueckers and, obviously Caitlin Clark last year are doing wonders for college basketball. And obviously, like you said, being from Connecticut, I grew up here and, girls basketball was not anything close to what it is today. And it's special. It's special playing basketball and not getting that as much recognition as the boys team. It's huge to get it now.
And what's so crazy too, Bella, is that I definitely, definitely want anyone that's looking at these graphs to go check this out. It's on sportico.com. They report on a lot of like financials for sports, and it's for college and professional.
Right.
It's not even for this year yet. This was last year. This is a year that Caitlin Clark dominated the news. South Carolina, Tennessee's always been big in this. You'll see that in the listing here. But if you look at the graph, I'm no math major, but that Husky logo is way the hell to the right versus the rest of this. And this is with someone like Caitlin Clark, who is selling out arenas in the NBA. So it just goes to show that kind of how silly I am when I said I would take Sarah Strong as the number 1 overall pick if I had to pick between her and Paige. If you're the Dallas Stars, you run to the podium and put Paige Bueckers' card up there, because she's going to sell out your arena for like the next 10 years. So we wish her the best tonight. Hopefully she's healthy and she plays enough minutes to satisfy her itch and get her knee back to where it needs to be. When we return, we're going to talk about the St. John's team itself, the preview. Will they provide any resistance? I have a feeling that Bella and I are going to agree they will not. We'll be talking about that after the break. Wayfair, my friends, I decorated my whole office because of how great Wayfair got a desk for me. And I'm going to get that ad going right now if I can just find it. Here it is. It happened after the holiday hustle. All this stuff I had to do, it just felt like everything that was happening in this room. If I could turn this camera around, you'd see it's a lot less than it was, but it felt like it was a catch-all. And sometimes when you're in transition, you're trying to tidy up a new space. And if Wayfair is there for you when it comes to whether it's a desk or a new bed frame or whatever, it just helps to clean up a space. So I decided to tackle my home office, where I spend most of my days, and I got something clean, modern, not too bulky. And honestly, for the size of this desk, the shipping was relatively inexpensive and it came very quickly. So it all fit in my budget. The best part, as I said, the delivery was completely hassle-free. So every time I walk into my office now, it feels like a whole new space. It's bright, organized, and I'm excited to dive into this work and talk to you guys about UConn basketball. Wayfair really helped me to start the year, so I implore you, give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's wayfair.com. Every style, every home. All right, we're back with Bella Tomato of Hoops Capital of the World and also a co-host with me here on Locked On UConn. Where can everyone find your stuff, Bella, on the Substack, and then also, if your social media? Give us that really quickly, and then we'll get into the St. John's.
Yeah, Substack's great. Go check it out. Hoops Capital of the World. I myself am on there along with some other good writers. I have some interview stuff up there now. The article that on the ACC Big East merger that we might get to talking about.
Talk about that in a little bit. Yep.
And just a few moments. And then my socials for all my broadcasting content is GT Broadcasting. So, go check me out on there. I'll give some content of my own because I dibble and dabble in a little bit of I'm a Patriots fan, so I have a little Patriots podcast that I every once in a while talk about some stuff on there. So check it out, GT Broadcasting on X and Twitter exclusively.
Love it. All right, St. John's not expected to give UConn much of a run tonight. If you look at their overall just kind of season, pull back the microscope, they're 11-5 overall. They're 1-4 in conference play. They're 5-3 at home. So obviously, they're an anomaly when it comes to college basketball, both on the men's and women's side. They have not played a neutral site game, but they're actually 6-2 on the road. So that to me always tells me, similar to when we had T. Baker on last Friday talking about Georgetown and how it wasn't going to be that close of a game, but what you will see is a team that's going to play hard. And I also will point to another stat of St. John's with the Red Storm. They're averaging only 63 points per game, but they're only giving up 54 points a game, 53.8. So this is a team that's not going to lay down and just let Paige Bueckers and AZ Fudd run over them. They are going to play hard. I do wonder if that's one of the reasons why Gino will be more cautious with Paige, knowing this team is a little more rough and tumble. What are your thoughts? And maybe we can get into the team's strengths and weaknesses here.
The biggest thing I saw from St. John's schedule, from looking at some scores, I believe they only beat Xavier by like 21. And I say only because look at what UConn did. I mean, it was a bloodbath without Paige Bueckers, in their first game without Paige Bueckers.
Sure.
And if you look at that game too, I mean, the starters were like Caden Samuels, who usually gets like 7 minutes a game, roughly, was coming in before halftime. So that kind of goes to show, Gino was clearing out the bench. If they had played their starters the whole game, UConn probably could have beat Xavier by, 80 to 100 points. I mean, it was not a good looking game. I think it was like 45-10 at the half. So looking at that, I think UConn's going to take care of him just fine. Like you said, they're definitely a little bit more of a hard in your face kind of defense, sort of heavy team. I think they'll be fine. I think UConn's going to be just fine. Really not.
Yeah. To me, Bella, like I think whenever teams, whether they're in the Big East or others, the challenge they're going to have with UConn is they're not relatively big. They're not a relatively big team. I'll double check that, but I'm almost positive. But most of their scoring, they're not getting really much from the 3-point line. They make about 6 3-pointers a game, but they're only shooting it at a 32% clip. So it'd be different if they were shooting at like a 40 or 42% clip, and then you can kind of say, well, they have a puncher's chance because if they catch fire, they typically would have an opportunity. But to me, when UConn plays inferior opponents like they typically do in the Big East, they really lean on their defense. Like you mentioned that Xavier game, I think they had 42 points on 32 turnovers that they created. So that's what I would expect from this game, even though this team is going to play a little harder. It's a 22.5-point spread. I do think UConn will cover that. And I think if you're a betting man or woman, I wouldn't bet your mortgage on it, but I think that's pretty easy pickings right now to throw a couple shekels on that. But I always tell people whenever I say a bet, it's usually going to go wrong. So although I did get the Baltimore -10 against who they just played in the playoffs. I forget, but I was doing a FanDuel ad and I said it's probably a pretty solid bet to go Baltimore -10 and they covered it. So I feel like I'm at least on like a 1-for-1 streak right now.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say is right from the get-go, like Xavier, in like the first 5 minutes, you could tell it was going to be bad. St. John's, I think, could hold on a little bit longer. You know what I'm saying? And then I think once things kind of get figured out. So if you are like you said, betting the game and it's 22.5, don't come for Mark if by, halftime it's looking
No,
close. I think by the end of the
please
game,
don't.
definitely open up. But I do think they'll cover 2. I think there's no issue on that.
Yeah, just really quick, just going over that St. John's roster. The tallest person they have is essentially the same size as Sarah Strong. So it's not going to be fun for them. I can tell you that right now. I know UConn's not going to get 20 and 10 from Jane Elfie. Although maybe she's starting to play better.
For her.
No, it's a great point. Like I think these are the type of games. Let's get into that really quick. If UConn wins this game by like 30 points, like they're typically going to do, like that range between 25 and 30 points, who do you want to see that you haven't seen kind of take that next step? We've seen Ali Zabel do it once. We've seen Morgan Shelley do it quite a few times now. You've seen Ashlyn Shade have that monster game against Iowa State. Who in this St. John's game in a team that you can kind of tinker with the lineup a little bit would you want to see step forward?
I'm glad you asked that because I was gonna bring up it's got to be Ice Brady. I really want it to be her. I believe she's playing tonight, as I saw. I know she was out against Georgetown, out sick, probably coming back. Maybe a type of little flu game for her, if you will. She only had two. She only had 2 points against Xavier. Really low for her. I know this season's definitely been a down year, but again, against a team like that, I want to see her, dominating inside and just kind of making girls look a little bit silly. And like you said, the height advantage today for her will play to her strengths. Yeah, Jana's probably going to get the start as she's, surpassed Ice in that spot. And not saying that this is going to be a career-defining game for Ice. It's only St. John's, but I do think it's a great game for her to get her confidence back and to feel like, listen, I am, one of the biggest girls on the court. Like, let me go out and show you that I am. I think it's got to be a double-digit game for her. And it's going to be something that UConn needs in the future for March to get her back kind of good rotation.
Well, you heard it there first. I'm with you there. I do want to see Jana step forward. I think the duo of them, and then if you get Aubrey Griffin back here in about a week or so, could really be a nice little triumvirate in the front court as time goes on. And we're going to talk about, but we are going to. That's it for the preview step. But when we come back, we're going to take a quick few minutes. Bella wrote a great piece on Hoops Capital of the World about a possibility of a Big East-ACC merger. I've talked about it on the show. I have some thoughts. We're going to talk about that coming up after the break. I'm going to pause it for a second to get this squared away. I always do that with this new form. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you're paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me quite a few times. I've had a few subscriptions and I've had Rocket Money come in and they make it look so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app and it helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, helps you lower bills. Whatever you want, it's all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, you want your spending habits tracked, or even goals you want to hit this year for savings or for doing some remodeling around the house, whatever it is. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and have saved a total of, get this number, 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So for me, one of the best features is that subscription tracker, whether it's streaming services, whether it's, we do grocery subscriptions, whatever it is, you don't have to worry about chasing anything down. They can cancel it for you. They ask you ahead of time, is this something you still want to use? And then you go from there. I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, it's been easy to automatically set aside money for my future. And I usually do it for when we take vacations. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Remember, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with your host here, Mark Zanetto of Locked On UConn, with Bella Tamano, a co-host of Locked On UConn, but also a beat reporter for Hoops Capital of the World Substack. All right, so you wrote a piece on the Substack about the Big East-ACC merger. I'm sure you listened to the show where I talked about it. Before we get into the crux of your piece, which is essentially like the best of both worlds for UConn, right? You get to stay in the Big East, but you also get the football aspect of the ACC. I don't necessarily know if that's the best of both worlds for the women, but I do think it would be the best of both worlds for the programs as a whole, right?
Right.
So I definitely agree with you there. What do you think about this? Do you would let's also talk about this being a giant hypothetical, because even though there is some rumblings, myself included, who kind of pitched this in May or March of last year. I forget the exact thing. I think it was March 17th, something like that, or May 17th, right after the parade for the UConn men. And I was having a guest on, and we were talking about it. We also talked about it. We can't have we would kick out BC. That's always the fun comment about that. We just Boston
Right.
College can't be a lot in our conference anymore. Um, but one of the things that we talked about was the interesting part about this is streaming channels and their ability to add more revenue to these kind of new deals. So one of the things I've learned about focusing on this Big 12 potential is Brett Yormark, their commissioner, wants to do separate revenue deals with both the basketball, men's and women's, and football. So it's two separate entities. Therefore, you get more money. It's not just one encompassing deal, right? So why I think this is a possibility, whether it's to go to the ACC as a full-fledged member or to merge as a mega conference, is you need to have, whether it's Jim Phillips out of the ACC or whether it's Val Ackerman out of the Big East, someone has to have the wherewithal and the vision to go to Netflix, to go to Apple, to go to Prime and say, we have the best basketball product in the world. And I would say that includes the NBA, because we're talking about men's and women's basketball.
Right.
And we have 12 of the last 15 national champions on the men's side. Package that into a $1 or $2 billion deal, not 500 million that like the Big East just got for like 7 or 8 years.
Right.
I'm talking in the billions.
Little
And
big.
then separately do another $5 billion deal with another streaming company for football, or have them buy the whole thing, but it's two separate things. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that's kind of the way of the future at this point. Like, streaming services are taking over everything. And I took a mass communication class, and the first thing last year, and the first thing that my teacher had me write down was, everybody is going to be in this business for the money, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. They don't care about, okay, like, are we going to hurt any feelings? Is this good for
Nope.
this? Is this good for that team? They care, are my pockets going to get bigger based off of this deal, or this deal? And at the end of the day, I think if they were able to pull off two incredibly huge deals, obviously hypotheticals, as you said, where it comes down to basketball and football, I mean, you're going to be back in business and be able to actually compete. And I think the thing that the ACC lacks is, yes, they're a Power Four conference, but they're kind of at like that tail end, right? I mean, the other
Yep.
three conferences are I don't want to say well ahead, but they're definitely at a larger scale. And I think the ACC is kind of losing some of its street cred. Adding, the Big East to it, like you said, basketball is going to, I mean, you can't really say that they're not going to be the best. Adding some teams like UConn, et cetera. And obviously, yes, Georgetown and some of those other schools, Providence, aren't as great like this year, but I mean, they've been,
Their history. Yeah.
yeah, the history. And I think, you take two blue blood schools, definitely with Duke and North Carolina, and then pair them with UConn, who, depending who you ask, you'll consider a blue blood. That's great basketball. And I think the other thing you have to look at is NIL wise, you have to pay players. You saw Dave Portnoy pay like the number one quarterback. I don't know which year it was, but I think he's coming here like this next season for Michigan. He paid him huge money, right? That's what's going to drive in these recruits is money, especially and airtime too. They want to be flashy. They want to see themselves on big TV programs. So in order to do that, I think it's going to come down to money. Money talks, and that's what I'm hoping happens. I think the Big East and ACC is the best. Like I said, the best of both worlds. There's no way to put it. I think it definitely is better than the Big 12, and I alluded to it in my article. Like, the Big 12, everything happens for a reason. I think a lot of people definitely were discouraged at that deal not going through, But I think the ACC merger is what was meant to happen for UConn. And yeah, there are some negatives and there are some things that would have to be, fine tuned. But I like this situation for UConn right now.
What I will say is, and very well put. I will say that my inkling is if something like this starts to gain traction, there's no way that it would happen if 28 teams are all in one conference.
No,
So what would have to happen in my mind would be 12 teams, 12 teams. So you'd have to chop four, and you'd have to have this mega conference of 24 schools, and they would be on in every time zone in the country.
mm,
And not every team would play each other every year. It would be, but also what it would create is anticipation. So, like, let's say one year you don't get to play Duke. Well, next year is must see TV because we don't get to play them for another year.
exactly.
One year you don't play North Carolina. One that year you play them. Um, you know, cool rivalries. Now Duke and Stanford, two of the most prestigious, academic schools in the country, are playing each other. They're doing it anyway in conference, but that's a pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing. Now all of a sudden you have a Virginia versus Georgetown, DC rivalry. Create that. There's that whole aspect to it. You bring
Right.
back some of the old Big East, Syracuse versus UConn.
Mhm.
Big East versus BC versus UConn. I didn't mean to throw up on my microphone. But it's I think it's worth exploring because no disrespect to Marquette, no disrespect to Creighton, no disrespect to DePaul, some of the kind of Midwestern schools. I think those would be the ones that are on the chopping block,
Right.
because they were thrown into the Big East when they wanted to create like this Catholic league of no football. And if you're going to do some kind of Big East ACC merger, UConn would fit the bill as the 18th ACC football team, and then you get the best of the Big East. Marquette, I could see staying because they're good in basketball, but I think you'd have to make some tough cuts. But what I will say too about the streaming aspect of things, it's already happening. Like we already see some games on Peacock,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
but because of NBC. But I think exclusively, if you were to, I mean, you're trying to tell me that Netflix wouldn't pay for. Netflix is trying to burn a hole in their pocket with all the stuff they want to do live. And the reason why, Bella, is whether you've done that mass communications class or not, is if you watch the live Christmas Day games, what did you see? You saw a NFL caliber broadcast. You
Mhm.
didn't see like a crappy, low budget, a bunch of, random announcers. Every one of those people were mercenaries from other networks that they brought on,
Absolutely.
and it was seamless. And you know what else you saw? Commercials.
Mm,
So it's not only are you not only can they pay for the the rights to stream Big East ACC games, but they can also double dip and pay advertisers to pay them who are getting paid even more money. It's an absolute bonanza for the streaming services, whether it's Prime. I don't know if you've noticed this. If you watch a football game on Prime and you're in your own living room, they will target market you an ad and then throw the QR code up.
yeah.
So if you can do that on a regular basis, even if it's Netflix and it's like, hey, new Netflix movie coming out, new comedy special, blah blah blah, they are going to hit up every market in the country: New York, Chicago, Dallas, California, the Carolinas, DC. It's a no-brainer. And people who don't have vision, who freak out about, well, it just doesn't make sense to people. It makes a ton of sense. If you actually take off your blinders and your nostalgia for what basketball and football used to be, nothing makes sense anymore. The ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, has Cal and Stanford in it. So if you suspend that disbelief on that issue alone, a ACC Big East merger is definitely possible.
Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying about having like a bunch of like random schools playing. I mean, like you said, like there's some interesting schools in it. I think too, recruit wise, kids are gonna want to like do a little extra traveling. You know what I'm saying? Like they're gonna be able to go to Stanford and have Cal and play Cal as well. And you know what that's gonna mean? They're probably gonna get up there a little day early. They're gonna be able to go check out the beach. They're gonna be able to, you know, obviously to a certain extent, But I think that's another kind of way to gain traction for recruits as well. Not having to go to like Georgetown and DePaul and these other places that maybe are a little less appealing. I think that's another plus to that
For sure. All right, we're gonna go on that and get this out to you guys so that you can watch us a little bit before the game or during, after, whatever. We're just excited that Paige Bueckers is back, and we're gonna go and watch the game ourselves. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For Bella Tamano, I'm Mark Zanetta, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected. Make sure that you guys are watching this game tonight. I'm curious to see how Paige plays. Go Huskies.